WHYL Carlisle. From the L.B. Smith Ford Lincoln Studios, Oldies 102.9 is WHYL Carlisle.
It's time now for the Real Estate Radio Guy with real estate broker John Rainville. For the next hour, you'll learn everything about national real estate topics, trends, and news revolving around Central PA. It's sponsored by Equity Prime Mortgage, Envirquest Inspections, and SearchHomesInPA.com. And now, here's the Real Estate Radio Guy, John Rainville.
Good morning, Pennsylvania. Hey, what a wonderful day out there. If you haven't seen, the sun's up, it's shining. It's absolutely gorgeous outside today.
It's cold.
It's gorgeous outside today. Hey, we've got a really cool show for you today. One, if you want to learn how to avoid taxes if you're selling an investment property, we have one of the experts on 1031 exchanges coming on here in just a couple minutes. Connie Greenawalt from 1031 Starker Exchange. And it's going to be lots of information for you. Whether you're an investor with a small, portfolio or maybe just one property and you're looking to sell it, and how can you shelter some of your money. Then after the half hour, we're going to have our home inspector, our inspector, John Staz, is going to be on, and John's going to be talking today about commercial building inspections. Most home inspectors, and John's company is way beyond that. They do commercial building inspections, so you could have a warehouse, a restaurant, a shopping center, and that you're purchasing, and you want to have an inspection on it, and his company does that. And then after the 3/4 hour mark today, we're going to have Realtor Mike McDermott on, who's going to be giving a few examples of 1031 exchanges that he's aware of, and that'll be a lot of our show today. So let's bring Connie online. Connie, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Oh, good morning. How's everyone there?
Awesome. Hey, and the sun's shining down there in Lewisberry, right?
Yeah, but it's still a little cold.
So, Connie, can you start off telling us, first of all, a little bit about your company? Because, there on the back of your card, it says you're the oldest,
One of the oldest.
One of the oldest.
Yep. One of the oldest companies in the industry. I started Eastern 1031 Starker Exchange in, I guess it was 91. Starker Exchange simply means you're going to hear several things. It's a 1031 exchange, a like-kind exchange, and a Starker exchange. And many companies have that name Starker in them, but I started that. Mainly because when they made the ruling, it was a man named Mr. Starker who challenged the IRS because he didn't want to pay taxes on a property he sold. So thank goodness for him. He is saving everyone in the U.S., tons and tons of money. So I started my company back then, and I love what I do. The whole reason behind it, 1031, is to continue an investor's investments. And the only way to do that is to not have to pay capital gain tax to the IRS. That way you can forward your money onto a new property.
So, Connie, so does it have to be a shopping center, or could it be a single? Maybe I own a single house that I rent out. Can I do a 1031 exchange on something like that?
You certainly can. Any type of real estate will qualify, except your primary residence. Back in the day, where a lot of us would have an office in our home, and we might be writing off that office. When you go to sell, you can do a 1031 exchange on that portion, because otherwise you'll pay tax. So it can be, slash primary. If it's a farm, Lancaster County, I have a lot of farmers who do a 1031 exchange because they've been farming 50 acres, so we just separate the investment from their primary. It can be anything at all, as long as it's real estate, and then it's like-kind exchange means real estate for real estate. So you could be selling a 2-unit and buy raw land, and that will qualify. You can sell commercial property and purchase a duplex, and that will qualify. You just want to try to spend all the money from the sale into replacement property.
Hi, Connie. How you doing? This is Kingsley.
Hi.
Quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
So we're talking about investment properties. Now, as we move through the show, does it preclude businesses? I mean, can a business put a property in a 1031 exchange, or does it have to be personally owned?
Nope. A business can do an exchange, real estate, and personal property. People can sell, timber rights, and that's an exchange. But if you sell a business, you have to purchase another type of business. So you can't sell a business and buy a piece of real estate and save the taxes. So it's business for business, real estate for real estate. I have people who sell racehorses. It's a racehorse for a racehorse.
Okay, so, but the question is, if the real estate is owned, let's say in a corporation or LLC, do the same rules apply to that LLC and 1031 exchanges as it does to individuals?
Yes, it does. The LLC is the exchanger. So if you have a partnership, if you create a partnership with an LLC, that partnership has to sell, and that partnership will have to purchase together.
And Connie, did I hear you correctly? So if someone has mineral rights like oil or a sports team maybe, they could actually do a 1031 exchange as long as they did it for either other mineral rights or another like sports team?
Well, I'll tell you, mineral rights it's pretty neat with the mineral rights, with the oil rights and such. They can actually buy real estate with that because they were selling oil rights from real estate. So the IRS does allow them to buy real estate with that. There's so many options out there as far as being able to replace your funds. Real estate is the biggest one, of course, but yeah, anything like that, any example that you have, it will qualify. There's a time frame, very important time frame with an exchange. A lot of people have been misguided along the way, and they think if they sold and then they purchased that made an exchange. But you have to have someone like myself involved, or it doesn't even qualify.
So
okay.
From my understanding, it's a huge gray area. So I can go from a farm to a shopping mall to oil rights. I mean, as long as it's somehow tied to real estate itself, you're kind of protected in this. And I guess it's all about how you twist it, I suppose, or how you portray it.
Yep, it's whatever somebody's trying to get into. I have people who have had rental properties forever and ever, and they're tired of it. And, they'll buy a condo at the beach or a cabin in the mountains, and they'll use it occasionally, and that qualifies.
So if I have a vacation home that I've actually made into like where it's a weekly rental, where we rent it out through the year, that would also qualify for a 1031 exchange?
Yes, it would. There's some, again, that gray area word that you use, there's some rules when it comes to vacation home and second home. We probably don't want to get into all that today, but when someone calls me, I go through that process with them and say, how often did you really use it? If they live there like 6 months out of the year, it's not technically supposed to qualify. But, I give them the guidance of what you do with the next property when you buy it. Okay? If they didn't buy a property in a 1031 exchange that they were using for vacation home, it will most likely qualify, but the next time around they don't want to do the same thing.
So, from my understanding, you act as what's called a qualified intermediary, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and what is the difference between a qualified intermediary and, say just a regular old realtor or anyone else trying to handle the exchange?
Okay. You really wouldn't want to do that. I mean, we go to our physicians, what they specialize in. It's the same thing. A realtor, an attorney, title companies, bankers, things like that, they don't specialize in a 1031 exchange. So it can get messed up, and it would be detrimental to the client later because it will get pulled. The IRS would like to pull it if they could. I actually act as an auditor to the IRS, and I get the reviews on my desk. The ones that they pull for audit end up coming to me because I'm one of the oldest companies in the industry, and I've never had one single failed exchange in my entire 25 years. So, of course, they trust me, and they will send it to me for, questions because the IRS doesn't specialize in exchanges either. So they have to reach out to someone like myself. you don't want someone handling anything for you that isn't qualified to do so.
So, Connie, we're actually talking about huge tax savings. We're not talking just a few pennies here. We're talking some major dollars that an investor can save because they're not going to pay the tax on it. They're going to sort of swap into a new property. So that's really enticing for them to keep rolling up their capital and all their equity, correct?
Correct. There's 3 major taxes, and when you sell, and if you don't know about it, and everyone out there who is selling has to rely on someone to say, you might want to check into a 1031 exchange. Especially realtors, when you're listing a property, just say, is this your primary? No. You might want to check it out. And you're not trying to solicit even myself or anybody. You're just trying to say, you might want to go online and find out some information. But 3 major taxes, especially here in PA, we have our state capital gain. If you've depreciated a property and you've held it for, years, you have depreciation recapture tax of 25%. And our federal capital gain tax is 15 to 23.8. So, basically you're looking at throwing away, over 40% of your profit to the IRS. And exchanges are so inexpensive. We don't judge by, your sale price. It's a flat fee. Very low. It's under $1,000, and I handle everything. Your sale closing, your purchase closing. I work with all parties involved. I will make the exchange a very smooth and successful one.
All right. So, quick question then. I'm getting ready to retire, and I have a lot of properties. I mean, let's look at the flip side. I mean, most people think about, maybe, growing their database or their portfolio. So now I'm getting ready to retire, moving down to Florida, and I've got a $1 million property. And I want to just kind of slow down a little bit, move down south, buy a small little rancher on the beach, and not have to deal with anything.
Okay.
Do I have to roll this over into a bigger account, a smaller property? Can I take some of the funds out of it? How does that work?
Okay. Anything you take out, you pay tax on. And that number one thing that will hit you is the depreciation recapture. So if you have $10,000 that you cashed out, but you might owe the IRS $40,000 in depreciation, they'll take the whole 10. So you have to be careful and make sure that your math works out before cashing anything out. But a lot of people at the end, it's like, I just want to retire. I want out of all this. There are many options out there besides cashing out, throwing money away to the IRS, and putting your money in the bank at 0.1% interest. I refer a lot of people to, you might have heard tenants in common. I work with a company who sells tenant in common commercial investment properties. It's wonderful. It's a thing to get into. Or even, John, as a realtor, if Mike McDermott's going to come on later with some possible replacement property options for someone who might be in a 1031. That is always good, and sometimes people can go in on a property together. But the tenants in common, they all pay between a 6 and 7.5% return. So why not retire, not pay the taxes, and have a monthly income coming in?
Connie, I've heard over the years a term called, a safe harbor. Are you a safe harbor?
A safe harbor means that you are following all the guidelines of a 1031 exchange. That's basically what it means, that you are in the safe harbor guidelines. The safe harbor guidelines is for a 1031. It's the IRC Section 1031 Starker exchange. So you're just following those guidelines. I am here to assist to follow all those guidelines.
So the ideal situation is to trade either same. Let's say if I'm selling $1 million property, I should be buying at least $1 million property, but I could actually buy like $1.5 million property also. Is that correct?
That's correct. In order to pay no taxes at all, okay, you want to buy property that's equal or greater in value, minus closing costs, though. So I have many people who think if I sell $1 million, I got to buy $1 million, but you don't. You can take off the real estate expenses, my fee, any title fees that it incurred. So say you had a $50,000 in closing costs. Then they want to try to reinvest $950,000. There's no reason to have to hit that $1 million mark if you don't want to. But by all means, you can take that $1 million and go out and buy something for $10 million. Doesn't matter how high you go.
So what happens if I have $1 million property and I want to buy 4 properties that are worth $250,000 apiece? Can I do it that way?
You certainly can. You can buy as many properties as you wish, but you have to remember the clock will start ticking on the day of the sale. From that date, just two important dates to throw out there. On the day of the sale, the clock will start ticking, and you'll have 45 days to identify all those properties you want to buy. And I know sometimes people say, it's very difficult, but no one should ever wait until the actual day of their sale to start looking. I tell everyone, as soon as you get a buyer for your property and you know that you're maybe 30 days or 60 days out, start looking. That gave them a month to 2 months before the clock starts ticking and put them in that time frame of 45 days. And then if you did identify your 4 properties, you have to close on all of them within 6 months. It's exactly 180 days from the date of the sale. And it can happen. I have people who will sell 4 or 5 and buy 20. It can happen.
All right, Connie, we're going to actually head to a break here, but I do want to kind of dive into this a little bit more because I've got a few scenarios that I think I'd like to head into. So we're going to go to break, and we'll be right back.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Buying or selling a home? For professional home inspection, call Envirquest of Harrisburg. Their certified home inspectors will conduct a thorough inspection and provide a detailed report with many pictures. They'll explain the findings. Do you have elevated radon levels in your house? Call Envirquest. They have fixed over 10,000 homes over the last 25 years. For a professional home inspection or radon mitigation, call Envirquest at 233-6144, 233-6144, or visit Envirquest online at evqharrisburg.com. That's evqharrisburg.com.
Hi, my name is John Rainville, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New York real estate broker and realtor. I'm your host for Real Estate Radio Guy. Our show is dedicated to local, state, and national real estate topics, trends, and news revolving around central Pennsylvania. We'll discuss the buying and selling process, mortgages, market conditions, property maintenance, commercial and investment real estate, and more. Real Estate Radio Guy is sponsored by Equity Prime Mortgage, Envirquest Inspections, and SearchHomesInPA.com. Join us every Saturday morning from 8 to 9 on WHYL.
Buying or selling a home? For professional home inspection, call Envirquest of Harrisburg. Their certified home inspectors will conduct a thorough inspection and provide a detailed report with many pictures. They'll explain the findings. Do you have elevated radon levels in your house? Call Envirquest. They have fixed over 10,000 homes over the last 25 years. For a professional home inspection or radon mitigation, call Envirquest at 233-6144, 233-6144, or visit Envirquest online at evqharrisburg.com. That's evqharrisburg.com. Searching for a home online morning, noon, and night, looking at website after website, clicking contact me and nobody does? Missed homes that were sold before you knew they were for sale? The better choice is searchhomesinpa.com. Search if you want, or they'll do it for you. Contact by phone, email, or text to adjust your search or to tour a property. Start online. They'll call you back at searchhomesinpa.com or call toll free 855-919-HOME and they'll do it for you. Searchhomesinpa.com, 855-919-4663.
All right, and we're back with Connie. So we were just kind of visiting in on a brief timeline. So let's start back from the beginning, Connie. I own, let's say, 5 properties. I'm getting ready to retire. And I'm going to move down to Florida, and I'm going to enjoy, the rest of my life in the nice warm weather. So I've contemplated this, and it's time to go. What's the first step? Do I contact you before I list them? Do I contact you after they're listed? How does this work? What's the best case scenario?
Well, you can always contact me with any questions that you ever have. I'm available 72 hours a week, 9 to 9, Monday through Saturday. But there's nothing that I can do or that we need to do until you have a buyer. So once you start getting a buyer and a closing date set up, that's where I come in. I prepare documents, and I work with the title company, so there's no documents to prepare until you have that buyer. And if you are going to do, as your example shows, it's hard. It is hard to try to sell that many properties and try to roll them into one, because you'd be taking the money from each property, which gives you more money to buy something bigger or keep buying smaller. But it is really hard. You need an aggressive realtor to get that out there, get them sold. You might only sell 3 of them out of that 5. Then you would just want to roll those 3 into one exchange, and then perhaps when the other 2 sell, buy something different, because your time frame is very limited. that 6 months comes and goes very quickly.
So it sounds like, let's say, for example, I have 5, and I put them on the market, as you say. I get a great realtor that markets the heck out of these properties, and I have 3 people come to me with offers. Let's say I have somebody come to me with an offer in January, and I want to try and sell all these. I can obviously adjust my closing date to try and coordinate these 3 to close at the same time, correct?
You're exactly correct, and that's what I would do. You know, you kind of buy yourself as much time as you possibly can to coordinate getting the closings in a month or 2 apart.
And this 45-day clock starts from when the first property goes under contract, correct?
You got it. If you are going to put multiple properties in one exchange, the clock will start ticking on the sale of the first one. So I have many people with your example who will do that, but the second one might have sold 2 months later, and then they're just saying, forget it, I'll just do a separate exchange on that one. So I buy myself more time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So it might make sense then to say, if I got an offer, to say, hey, great, maybe off the table agreement, say, look, I'm seriously considering your offer. I'm probably going to take it, but give me, a couple of weeks. I've got a couple other offers on the table. So there's probably realtors out there that work with that scenario, is what you're telling me.
Yes. They'll try to negotiate a little bit more time, or instead of somebody saying, let's close in 30 days, just buy yourself time and say, let's say, on or before 60 days. And then when those other properties start selling, you can sell in, less time.
Okay, so my 45 days, from my understanding, is the time that I have to find the property that I'm going to replace these with, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it has to be under contract within that 45 days.
No, it doesn't. You do not have to have a contract. The first rule is you can identify up to 3 properties, regardless of value, and you can buy 1, 2, or 3 of them. Someone might have a property in mind, and they think that's great, and it's not under contract. But just in case something falls through, they had 1 or 2 other ones as a backup, because you have to buy one of the properties that you identified. You can't come back later, a few months later, and say, can I change one of those? So it's best to have them, identified, and that you're going to buy one, but by no means does there have to be a contract on it. But, of course, you don't want to identify something that you don't really think you can buy either.
Okay, so, and we have to close after I have these properties identified within 6 months, correct?
Yep, it's 180 days, and that 45 days is inside the 180. So it's running consecutive. You have a total of 180 days from beginning to end. Okay,
now, let's just say that I have my property under contract. I now have 45 days to find at least 1 or 3 properties that I am going to at least put an offer in and are very interested in. And within that 45 days, we write down on paper, I guess somehow, and record those 3 properties that I'm thinking about purchasing. And then let's say mine does close in 30 days. That money basically sits in like an escrow account for 6 months, correct? While the other ones, tentatively close within that 6 months.
Correct. I personally open individual escrow accounts, and I use Wells Fargo Bank. So your funds stay in there in an individual escrow account. They're not in our checking account. They're not commingled. They're not reinvested. Your funds cannot leave that account without your permission, your verification. So they're safe and secure. And as many properties as you sell, the funds can keep going into that account. And then once you're ready to purchase, I wire the funds directly to the closing table.
Connie, what if I'm the guy that I have the shopping center that Kingsley's going to buy, doing the 1031 exchange? Is there anything special I need to do as the seller of his end goal?
Very good question. No. Even on when you're selling and and you're in a 1031 exchange, it does not affect the buyer whatsoever. The same goes when someone is selling to our exchange client. There are a few documents to be signed, 1031 exchange documents, and all I ask is for cooperation. I'm performing a 1031 exchange, and I ask for your cooperation. So there's only 2 documents that need to be signed. And when someone is selling to our buyer, they don't really care where your money's coming from, and it's actually better because if you're the buyer in an exchange and you're out there looking and I provide a proof of funds letter saying we are holding X amount of cash, it doesn't get any better than that. That person's not, if it's all cash deal, they're not going to the bank and trying to, go through the process of the lending. Cash talks. and you're going to get that property quicker than someone else. If you need a mortgage, at least this is showing, okay, well, they're holding $100,000 for me, and I only need a $50,000 loan. You're going to get it, So the process will be very quickly. So yes, that was a very good question.
Just another question that popped in my mind. Let's say if I sold my vacation home here in the Poconos, can I buy a vacation home outside the country?
No. Okay, that's the only thing. I work nationwide, so anywhere in the U.S. You can sell here in Pennsylvania and buy in Florida, which a lot of people do when we have this cold weather. But the money has to stay in the U.S. So you cannot defer paying capital gain taxes to the U.S. to buy a property in another country.
Connie, I know you've been doing this for years. What's the biggest or the number one mistake you see an investor do on one of these 1031 exchanges?
Is when I go through all the figures with them and I show them what they owe, and then they'll call me and say, well, I met with my accountant, and my accountant said, you might as well pay the taxes now because you'll have to someday anyway. Worst piece of advice ever given to anyone, because you'll never, ever pay the taxes that you are deferring in your lifetime unless you cash out. So you can continue to roll. You can do as many exchanges in a year, in a lifetime, as you ever want. Cashing out is never a benefit to anyone. That's the worst thing that happens is when someone says, I have advice to cash out, yet I've done the math with them and I'm showing them what they're going to owe.
Now, the person that's on the upper end, the one that the shopping center that Kingsley's buying, they don't have to do a 1031 exchange with their money. That's their call, correct? I mean, they're not locked into it.
It would be sad if they wouldn't, because it is commercial. And, I mean, just to throw this out there, I charge $950 for an exchange. Anyone who even has a $50,000 gain on a property, that's 15%. That's $7,500 right there to the IRS. That's not counting state capital gain or depreciation. It just doesn't make any sense. I just don't know any reason why somebody would want to pay that when you never had to.
Wow. So you're not only losing the capital gains and the money, but it would almost make no sense to no matter what you're selling, obviously aside from your personal home, to roll it into something that's maybe a money producer.
Oh, my gosh, yes. I mean, what I say to a lot of people that are even throwing away $20,000 in taxes, I'm like, what investment are you going to get? I mean, you can't put it in a bank and make any money, so what are you going to do to get that $20,000 back?
So it sounds to me like, and maybe you've seen this, but let's say somebody, is getting up in age and they're just sick of owning rental properties. So they've got, 4 duplexes, a couple quads, etc., and it's just becoming too much work. So in order to make sense, perhaps they buy something low maintenance like a shopping mall.
Yes, something that is like a tenants in common, where you have basically you have the property management taking care of it for you, and you get your check in the mail every month. You don't worry about the tenants. You don't worry about going in and changing light bulbs and such. You don't have to do anything. You sit back and collect the money, but it makes more sense to do that than it does to simply cash out because you're tired of renting.
Connie, I have a specific question. So let's say I have a restaurant owner that owns the real estate and the business. Is that something we can do a 1031 exchange on?
By all means. What it is, it's actually 2 exchanges, though. We have the real estate side and the business side. Some people elect, if there is a restaurant, if someone's selling it, it's because they really just want out of the business. They just don't want to do it anymore. They might just do the 1031 exchange on the real estate end, and they might cash out in the business end, which is always sad. But unless they want to buy another business, usually when you have that scenario that you just said, they just don't want anything anymore. So they'll end up paying tax on the business end. But I always tell everybody, try to put as much, do the math, and put as much, make the real estate part higher than what the business was. That way you're not paying so much in taxes on the business when you cash out that portion.
Okay, so I've got a restaurant, and I've got this business. So the real estate side I'm going to roll over. If I take the business end of my restaurant, so to speak, can I roll my business funds into an apartment complex or a 4-unit building, and would that be considered business so I can roll all of those proceeds over?
And you and I would think so, but no, because you're actually purchasing the real estate. Even though there's business inside that, you're buying the real estate. But it can be any type of business. I mean, if they wanted to get into something else, it can be another type of business. You don't have to necessarily be restaurant. Perhaps maybe they'll buy a gas station that has real estate and the gas station deli. That would qualify. The business for business, the real estate for real estate.
Interesting. Okay, so I have a property that I want to purchase, okay? And it's a no-brainer for me. I run the numbers, and I write an offer on this property. I want to write an offer because I don't want to lose this property. And I have it under contract today. Is there anything from precluding that property? Let's say that, okay, great. In order to make this work, I now want to sell my 2 rental properties to make this work. Can I put a property, an offer in on a property before I even have these other properties listed, and how would that work?
Yes, by all means, but you can definitely have it just puts you a step ahead. That means you're not waiting that 45 days to try to identify a property and, scatter trying to looking for something. Sometimes it's great to have it already picked out, but you have to have a very negotiable seller that's willing to wait, for you, because you don't ever, you can, but you really don't want to sell. You don't want to buy before you sell, put it that way. That's called a reverse exchange. And, it can be done, but you're talking $4,000 to $7,000 for the exchange at that point because the reverse is so much more complex. I try to tell everyone to avoid that at all in all cases. It's easy sometimes, I think, to find the property we want to buy. It's a little tougher sometimes when we're trying to sell our properties and make it work in the time frame. So you can have a contract, but definitely a seller who's willing to wait on you.
Connie, is there a hold time? Do I have to have owned the property for 3 years or anything in order to do a 1031 exchange?
I'm glad you're asking that because I wanted to talk about all the people who flip properties. There is no, if you didn't do an exchange before and you call me and you said, I bought this property 8 months ago, I just had an offer I couldn't refuse, can I do an exchange? I would say yes. If you were in a 1031 exchange and you bought it, I would say, could you hold on to it a little bit longer? There is another gray area, of course. There is no time frame set by the IRS on how long you actually had to hold your replacement property before you resold it. You would definitely want to do another exchange, but you don't want to flip properties. You don't want to call me and say, I'm buying this HUD home, I'm going to fix it up, and I'm going to put it on the market in 3 months. I would tell you, let's not do that. I know there's a lot of people out there who advertise and promote flipping houses, but they're not telling these poor people what's going to happen by flipping properties. They might have made $25,000 on a deal, and now they're throwing away 35% of that to the IRS. Not a good call. Flipping properties is not good. Holding it at least a year is good. An accountant will say hold it at least 2 years, but the IRS isn't saying either of those figures. It really is. Everyone is a different circumstance. If ever asked by the IRS if you sold a property 7 or 8 months later and they question you with a letter and say, you bought this in a 1031 exchange, why did you sell it so quickly? It will be up to you to defend yourself. And if you tell them someone offered you $30,000 more than what you paid for it, that's an investment. They can't argue that. That's what this is about. It's an investment. And especially if you roll it into another property, it looks all the better.
So not something like a wholesaler should do either.
No, unfortunately, when someone's developing, and I do too, okay? I mean, you get a big piece of land and you subdivide it. If they bought, and then they start selling these lots off. It depends on how long it took them to do that, okay? If you're buying a replacement property to do that, those properties you're selling aren't going to qualify because you're intentionally buying 10 acres of land to subdivide and resell. But if I've had land for years and years and now I want to subdivide it, I could do a 1031 on each of those.
Wow.
Because I didn't intentionally buy it to do that. I just decided to do that after years.
Talking with you, Connie, I've got so many more questions that I can probably talk to you for probably at least another hour about this. And just scenarios. So I know a lot of our callers are going to have a lot of these same questions. What is the best way to get a hold of you? Do you have an email? Do you have a website?
I certainly do. The email is very simple. It's just StarkerExchange@AOL.com, and Starker is Starker Exchange at AOL.com. And it's Eastern 1031 Starker Exchange. And my number is, nice to remember, it's just 717-308-1031.
308-1031.
Yes.
Connie, it was definitely a pleasure talking with you today. I've learned so much, and I know John has.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's great. We're going to have to get you back on after the first of the year because I know our people are just going to have so many more questions for you.
No, I love it. Bring the questions on. That's what I'm here for.
And people, we can always, and I'm sure, Connie will check our Facebook page. But go to our Facebook page, Real Estate Radio Guy, and post questions. I'm sure you've got them. Unfortunately, we just didn't have the time to field calls today because there's so much involved with the 1031 exchange. But we certainly want to thank Connie for showing up, and we're going to have to head to a commercial break. So thanks, Connie, and we'll be talking soon.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Rainville, a Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New York real estate broker and realtor. I'm your host for Real Estate Radio Guy. Our show is dedicated to local, state, and national real estate topics, trends, and news revolving around central Pennsylvania. We'll discuss the buying and selling process, mortgages, market conditions, property maintenance, commercial and investment real estate, and more. Real Estate Radio Guy is sponsored by Equity Prime Mortgage, Envirquest Inspections, and SearchHomesInPA.com. Join us every Saturday morning from 8 to 9 on WHYL.
Searching for a home online morning, noon, and night, looking at website after website, clicking contact me and nobody does? Missed homes that were sold before you knew they were for sale? The better choice is SearchHomesInPA.com. Search if you want, or they'll do it for you. Contact by phone, email, or text to adjust your search or to tour a property. Start online. They'll call you back at SearchHomesInPA.com or call toll-free 855-919-HOME and they'll do it for you. SearchHomesInPA.com, 855-919-4663.
Hi, this is Kingsley Harmer with Equity Prime Mortgage. Equity Prime is excited to announce its grand opening here in Central PA. Equity Prime Mortgage is an aggressive, direct lender licensed in 45 states and D.C. Join me as we discuss different topics such as qualifying, budgeting, and savings, and find out why we are able to offer better rates and qualify more clients. Equity Prime is currently hiring experienced loan officers in the Central PA area. If you feel you are qualified, please call 717-200-4800.
Hi, my name is John Rainville, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New York real estate broker and realtor. I'm your host for Real Estate Radio Guy. Our show is dedicated to local, state, and national real estate topics, trends, and news revolving around central Pennsylvania. We'll discuss the buying and selling process, mortgages, market conditions, property maintenance, commercial and investment real estate, and more. Real Estate Radio Guy is sponsored by Equity Prime Mortgage, Envirquest Inspections, and SearchHomesInPA.com. Join us every Saturday morning from 8 to 9 on WHYL.
Hi, this is Kingsley Harmer with Equity Prime Mortgage. Equity Prime is excited to announce its grand opening here in Central PA. Equity Prime Mortgage is an aggressive, direct lender licensed in 45 states and D.C. Join me as we discuss different topics such as qualifying, budgeting, and savings, and find out why we are able to offer better rates and qualify more clients. Equity Prime is currently hiring experienced loan officers in the Central PA area. If you feel you are qualified, please call 717-200-4800.
Wow, was that exciting? I mean, I'm a real estate broker. I've been doing this 30 years. Have been involved with several 1031 exchanges. But for one, I did not realize how inexpensively it could be done there with Connie's company, Starker 1031 Exchange. And wow, we have offices in the Poconos, and we sell vacation homes all the time that are rented out, and wow, you can exchange them. I really didn't know that.
I didn't realize how much you could save in taxes. I mean, I've been in finance my whole life, but just from a standpoint of what they call it, tenants in common, and throwing money away when trying to cash out and retiring, there's so much money you can save by just looking into this. And I didn't realize how open the field was. I mean, you're going from a commercial property to a vacation home is okay.
Yeah, 40% tax savings. That's huge. Well, we're going to be bringing John Staz on the line today, and John's going to be talking about commercial property inspections. He's sort of one of the only ones, he's actually the only one I know in central Pennsylvania that does the commercial property inspections. John, are you there?
Good morning.
Good morning. So this morning we're going to be talking about commercial property inspections because I just told our listeners you're one of the only inspection companies I know that does commercial properties, commercial buildings. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. With the residential inspections, everything's sort of lumped together. We do a little testing, radon. We do some testing and examine the property. With commercial, things are more separated out. There's several different types of inspections that are done on a commercial property usually. There's a phase one inspection, which we do not do, but that's usually categorized as a search of the records, databases to see if there was, the history of the property, whether there was spills or environmental contamination nearby. Then if the phase one yields results, then they do a phase two, which is targeted testing. Then if cleanup is needed, then it's a phase three, which is considered the cleanup. On the inspection side, the non-environmental inspection, what we do, it's similar to a home inspection. There's a whole different set of things that we look at, things that you wouldn't find in a home, such as different types of cooling systems, things like, parking garages that have structural concrete that we, elevator systems that you wouldn't usually find in residential. So usually to do the commercial inspections, when we start getting into more complex properties, we have a team of specialists that will bring out when needed, such as an elevator person or a structural concrete person. But actually, a lot of commercial properties are really like, they call them a commercial property because maybe the zoning is commercial, but they're really very similar to, just a residential house, just on a commercial parcel. So those are very similar to the residential properties.
So it sounds to me like you still inspect all of the structural components. You're going to inspect the roof. I'm sure you're bringing in people to check their wiring, and their heat systems and all things like that. So, John, I guess it really depends on how big the building and what type of building it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's just a different set of information that's needed with the bigger properties, or more like commercial and industrial, such as like high-rise buildings and things like that. It's just a different set of things you find there.
What happens if we get into specialties? So let's say, for example, I want to buy I'm selling a restaurant, and I want to do a 1031 exchange, which is why this conveniently seems like a perfect topic today. But do you do any sort of specific inspection on, let's say, somebody selling a restaurant? Is there something added to that you might check from a special standpoint of view?
Sure. Yeah. With a restaurant, you're going to have a bunch of specialty equipment. So we'd want to advise the client you need to get somebody to come in and inspect the restaurant equipment, the ovens and ventilation system. There's specialized ventilation. So that would be a situation where you would bring in a specialist to look at that.
And I would imagine for restaurants, a big portion of that would be looking for maybe different types of bugs or rodents or something to that effect.
Yeah. The pest inspection is pretty much the same. Looking for the wood destroying insects, but as part of an inspection, we do look for rodents and signs of them and evidence that they're there, and we advise the client about them.
John, you laugh, but the pizza place around where I live has failed twice for rodents and mold in the walk-in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Wow. We're not going there for lunch.
No, and I've already stopped. Everyone I know has stopped as well.
Yeah.
Hey, John, I'm just picturing some commercial buildings in my head. So you run into a lot of different types of roofing systems then too on some of these commercial buildings now, don't you?
Yeah. That's one of the things that an inspector who's going to do commercial inspections, they need to be versed and knowledgeable about some different types of things that you're not going to find in a residential building. So, yeah, you run into things like PVC roofing that you wouldn't run into on a residential property. So you just need to be familiar and experienced at inspecting different materials.
Now I have a huge question, and as an investor myself, let's say, for example, I'm buying a property in York County, and with all these new regulations coming out, like with new builds, et cetera, is there anything that you look for, let's say, in a commercial property that would point out to the potential buyer to say, hey, look, you're buying this property, it hasn't been upgraded to, say, maybe the new sprinkler systems or something to that effect. Do you have any experience with saying when purchasing or transferring a property, certain things need to be done or upgraded to meet code?
Not so much as far as code, because that would be something that would be, a lot of times with the codes, they're either grandfathered or they're going to have if they're doing renovations to the property, they're going to have to meet up with those codes. But definitely during the inspection, with a commercial property, it's a more specific use. So the buyer is going to need to decide, is this property adequate for what I want to use it for? So the inspector needs to be versed on what's there at the property so they can educate the buyer, to make sure it's a good match for them with the specific requirements for their usage.
Okay, so you would be able to point out to me if I'm buying, let's say, maybe an older strip mall to say, look, I can buy this as is and rent it out without having to worry about upgrading, or would I or you'd be able to tell me whether or not this is something I would have to do?
Yeah. I mean, the codes requirements, they're specific to locally. So, if you're buying a property and you're going to get a contractor to do renovations, that they're going to be responsible for dealing with the local authorities as far as making sure that the work that they do is compliant. But we definitely look for, deficiencies as far as, the different systems at the property. So,
John, we were talking
point that out.
We were talking a lot today, obviously, about the 1031 exchanges. So I know a lot of our investors, a lot of our listeners, they own rental properties. So if I have a 4-unit rental property, do you consider that a commercial property?
Well, I think and you guys help me out on this, I think above 4 units is considered.
Well, yeah, I was talking more about the inspection. In other words, let's just say I have a 4-unit. So am I going to pay 4 residential inspection fees to you to come for you to come and inspect that property, or does it fall into a commercial category, and because it's 4 units, it's X number of dollars?
Yeah. What we do in that case, as far as the inspection fees, just to add it, I think it's $60 a unit. After the first unit, we just add a small amount onto the fee for each unit, and so that's the way that works.
All right. Hey, that's awesome. Hey, John, your best contact number again?
Contact number is 717-233-6144.
And your website, one more time.
evqharrisburg.com.
All right, John. Hey, listen, I really appreciate it. We love talking to you today about the commercial inspections. We're running a little bit tight today, so we're going to go to break. Thanks. Have a great day.
All right, thank you.
Buying or selling a home? For professional home inspection, call Envirquest of Harrisburg. Their certified home inspectors will conduct a thorough inspection and provide a detailed report with many pictures. They'll explain the findings. Do you have elevated radon levels in your house? Call Envirquest. They have fixed over 10,000 homes over the last 25 years. For a professional home inspection or radon mitigation, call Envirquest at 233-6144, 233-6144, or visit Envirquest online at evqharrisburg.com. That's evqharrisburg.com.
Hi, my name is John Rainville, a Pennsylvania, Maryland, and New York real estate broker and realtor. I'm your host for Real Estate Radio Guy. Our show is dedicated to local, state, and national real estate topics, trends, and news revolving around central Pennsylvania. We'll discuss the buying and selling process, mortgages, market conditions, property maintenance, commercial and investment real estate, and more. Real Estate Radio Guy is sponsored by Equity Prime Mortgage, Envirquest Inspections, and SearchHomesInPA.com. Join us every Saturday morning from 8 to 9 on WHYL.
Buying or selling a home? For professional home inspection, call Envirquest of Harrisburg. Their certified home inspectors will conduct a thorough inspection and provide a detailed report with many pictures. They'll explain the findings. Do you have elevated radon levels in your house? Call Envirquest. They have fixed over 10,000 homes over the last 25 years. For a professional home inspection or radon mitigation, call Envirquest at 233-6144, 233-6144, or visit Envirquest online at evqharrisburg.com. That's evqharrisburg.com.
Welcome back. Hey, so just a lot of great information today. Kingsley and I are having a blast here because we just have so many more questions that we could ask John Staz about the commercial property inspections.
And Connie.
Connie, we're definitely going to have her back after the new year and go further in depth with this. Wow.
Yeah, it's a little late in the year now, but just the tax implications alone by setting this up, maybe even a quick phone call to her could save you thousands. In a lot of cases, $20,000 for a small property.
Wow, for up to 40% savings on your taxes. That's huge. Huge. Hey, we're going to be bringing online here Mike McDermott, a realtor with BrokersRealty.com. How ironic is that? But Mike does residential and commercial properties. Are you there, Mike?
Yes, I am, John.
All right. I know you're doing a big trip to Barnesville today, right?
That's right. And I think that's going to be one of those 1031 exchange properties.
Do you think so? That sounds great. Hey, can you tell everybody sort of like the area that you work in, and then let's talk a little bit about maybe some real quick 1031 exchange properties.
Sure. Primarily in the Lancaster, York area. We'll do commercial properties, Lancaster, York, Harrisburg, pretty much central Pennsylvania. Going as far as just a little bit south of Penn State, as far west as Gettysburg. We've got some things, and then throughout Lancaster. And a lot of our properties seem to be some unique things that would fit well within what Connie's doing in the 1031 exchanges. We're seeing a lot of folks with the larger vacation properties. Maybe they bought them, or built them in the mid 2000s, and now looking to get out. But that's a little bit stagnant. Those price ranges, of $300,000 to $500,000. A little bit stagnant this time of year, but we're seeing activity, which is good.
So it sounds like a good time of year to maybe actually reach out if you're even thinking about a vacation home.
Yes, very good time because people aren't. It's like buying patio furniture in the winter. You get a better deal than you do in the blazing hot summer.
Mike, I'm just thinking about some of the properties that you actually have right now that I know that you're holding in your inventory. You have one in Hanover that's a potential like group home or bed and breakfast or
correct.
That would be a fantastic 1031 exchange property, right?
That's a perfect example of it. It's about 5,000 square feet. It was built as a convent. It's an all-brick building built in, I think, 1980. Structurally extremely sound. It was a group home, so it has 16 bedrooms, common areas, large kitchen. And a nice feature of that, it is completely up to date with the T3 fire alarm and audible visual fire system and sprinkler system. So that would be perfect for a 1031 exchange for the seller.
And then I know you have a low time upkeep situation there. You've got a package of 10 garages in Lancaster?
Yes, and that's pretty interesting because there's 10 garages, and this would be another one. It's not an expensive property, around $60,000. Yet, if we wrap this back into what Connie was talking about and use this as an example for the seller, on a $60,000 gain, you'd probably be paying about $24,000 in taxes. So that would leave you about $36,000 to reinvest. If we look at a general 20% down payment, that would give you $180,000 in purchase power, which would equate to maybe a 2 or 3 unit apartment building if you're going to reinvest. So you're looking at a cash flow there of maybe $2 to $250. That's without doing a 1031 exchange. If the gentleman does a 1031 exchange and takes all of that $60,000 and reinvests it, he'll be able to purchase up to a $300,000 property. Now, that can equate to a 4, 6, or 8 unit, and just think of the difference in the cash flow from a 4 to 8 unit property of a 2 unit property. And that's a real good example of, you don't need to be a strip mall or, a shopping center to do these exchanges. It'll really help you leverage your way to wealth. I mean, those are some of the terms that we haven't heard a lot since the 80s and 90s. Other people's money, leverage your way to wealth. And this is a perfect example of how they can use, the government's own taxing to leverage your way to wealth.
All right, Mike, we're running tight on time here, so I'm going to give you a quick overview of some of the properties that I know that you guys have that could be done with a 1031 exchange. I know you have 2 shopping centers here in central Pennsylvania in the $4 to $6 million range. I know you have a huge restaurant land complex in central Pennsylvania for about $5.5 million. I know that you guys also have probably at least 4 or 5 restaurants, convenience stores, gas stations, just to name a few of the things that you guys have in your bag right now. And if somebody wants to reach out to you today, what's the best number to reach you at?
They can call me at 717-874-7771. Yeah, we've got a great inventory of properties for the investor. Give us a call. We'll be happy to help you out. And if you've got something to sell, we can get you in touch with Connie, save a lot of tax money.
Definitely give Mike a call. It was a great show today. Make sure you visit our Facebook page, Real Estate Radio Guy. We're going to be back next week with a lot of great information. Thank you for calling. Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great day.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Radio Guy with real estate broker John Rainville. Listen each week at this time and learn all about buying and selling, mortgages, market conditions, property maintenance, and much more. It's brought to you by Equity Prime Mortgage, Envirquest Inspections, and SearchHomesInPA.com. It's the Real Estate Radio Guy, Saturday mornings at 8 on Oldies 102.9 and AM 960 WHYL.
Joe Ricky plays good time oldies. WHYL.